Hey everyone, it's Cory McCarthy and thank you for tuning in. This video is going to be a mix of information, motivation, and a rant, so you have been warned. During last Sunday's Q&A, the topic of incels was brought up. For those who are not aware, the term incel, which is a portmanteau of the words involuntary and celibacy, describes a person who feels incapable or is actually incapable of securing a romantic and/or sexual partner despite their desire for one. In other words, these people are not celibate by choice, but usually by some combination of factors within or without their control, such as looks, outlook, finances, status, psychological and social issues, etc. And while I don't have any global data on hand to demonstrate just how widespread involuntary celibacy is, I can share a couple of statistics that I have found. According to the CDC, 27.2% of men and 28.6% of women are sexless within the 15 to 24 age range. However, I cannot be sure if those figures also include those celibate by choice. I will admit I am quite shocked by the female figure being slightly higher than the male, which is why I wonder if personal choice was not controlled for. And while not necessarily to do with celibacy per se, approximately 1 in 4 Norwegian men have not, for one reason or another, sired offspring by the age of 45, while conversely, far fewer Norwegian women are found to be childless by that same age. And this is despite the fact that both Norwegian men and women consider having children to be an important part of life, according to surveys. Thus, the Norwegian statistics imply that a minority of Norwegian men are very likely having children with the majority of Norwegian women, in turn leaving the remaining majority of Norwegian men unable to fulfill their biological imperative despite a general desire to do so. Now, I've heard the term incel used for nearly 2 decades now, but it seems to be gaining public attention more recently. This, of course, is not helped by self-proclaimed incels gaining notoriety for committing heinous acts of violence in the name of incelhood. Yes, I invented that term. For instance, Elliot Rodger, who was responsible for 6 murders in the Isla Vista killings of 2014. Chris Harper-Mercer, who killed 9 people at a college in Oregon a year later in 2015. William Atchison, who went by the pseudonym Elliot Rodger on several online forums, who shot 2 people at his high school in 2017. And more recently, Alek Minassian, who killed 10 people in a van attack in Toronto this past April. In fact, Alek posted this on Facebook just prior to the massacre, claiming, "The incel rebellion has already begun. We will overthrow all the Chads and Stacys. All hail the supreme gentleman, Elliot Rodger." For the unaware, the term Chad makes reference to any conventionally attractive, typically muscular and sporty guy with high levels of self-confidence and consistent success with the opposite sex. Basically the polar opposite of your typical incel male. And a Stacy is the female counterpart to the Chad. These are 2 real-world examples of Chads and Stacys that came up on Google image search, just to provide you with some visual context. At this point, I'm going to provide my thoughts on this topic, and this will only be scratching the surface, I am sure. Nobody is owed anything. Women are not obliged to provide desperate men access to their vaginas, and nor should they be. Pussy is not a charity, people, and women can't write that shit off on taxes. But we live in a time where socialism has become so increasingly popular, especially among millennials. And people falsely believe in equality, or rather, the false concept of equal outcomes. Equal outcomes simply do not exist and never will. Everyone is different. Some people are smarter, some stronger, some faster, some more talented, and others perhaps are none of those things or very few. Take IQ, for example. IQ has been documented to be as high as 86% genetic,
by adulthood.
And genetic means that other factors such as access to education, food, resources, etc. are relatively minor by comparison to the influence that your genes have on your cognitive ability.
And a body of longitudinal research demonstrates that IQ is the best predictor of positive life outcomes such as better education, better occupation, and earning a higher income. Furthermore, higher intelligence at the national level has a greater positive impact on democracy, rule of law, and political liberty.
In other words, countries with people possessing a lower average IQ will usually be shitholes compared to countries with a higher average IQ. Generally speaking, of course, because instituting disastrous systems like communism can also transform an otherwise decent place into a heaping pile of steaming chunky diarrhea. But people love to deny reality. As the saying goes, a beautiful lie is easier to swallow than a painful truth. And entitlement is becoming increasingly common. And in the case of incels, this can lead to resentment, anger, and rage over time, especially when a basic biological drive, such as procuring sex and intimacy, remains unfulfilled for them, while others seem to enjoy it in abundance. Many people today seem to expect that simply because they exist, they should be provided for, like fucking children. And this is why we see socialism gaining popularity and why political candidates like Bernie Sanders experiencing such mass appeal. People see others with shit they want themselves and feel entitled to taking a share, even if by government force. It matters not to them if the person being robbed, essentially, worked their asses off and made sacrifices to earn what they have. But this entitlement doesn't just stop with, food, water, money, and shelter. It extends to desires such as sex. Listen up. No one inherently owes you shit. You don't even have a right to live. The construct of human rights aren't even recognized or respected the world over, especially in the aforementioned shitholes of the world. There is no inherent law in the universe bestowing upon anyone any particular rights, including the maintenance of one's own life. Now, you can choose to defend yourself to the best of your abilities,
but when times turn sour, as they historically have,
and you find yourself incapable of adequate self-defense or defense of loved ones for one reason or another, well, that's just the way the ball bounces. And such is the price of becoming too comfortable, too domesticated, too complacent, and too dependent, too entitled. This is why I advocate strongly for bettering yourself, becoming self-sufficient, fortifying your body, learning how to fight, learning how to use weapons, practicing environmental awareness, learning survival skills, etc. Because one day, nanny government will not be there to protect you, assuming that you believe they are now. You will not be able to just dial 911, 999, or 000 and get help.
This sentiment kind of reminds me of a badass shirt that I saw recently which reads, "Training for the worst day of my life."
The path we are currently on here in the West, as I've discussed numerous times on this channel, is not sustainable. It will lead to collapse. And this circles me back to incels. Men don't have any inherent right to sex simply because they exist. Nor are women obliged to provide sex to men who are incapable of acquiring it via natural competition. You should strive to improve yourself in order to improve your quality of outcomes. Don't like your body? Work on it. Think a better hairstyle would suit you? Make it so. Think your current dress style isn't doing you any favors? Change it. Don't like your financial situation? Go to school, learn a trade or change jobs, etc. Do something to improve it, even thinking outside the box.
Many people have gone from fuck all to starting empires, but that takes thinking outside the box, among other things.
And those are just a handful of examples of ways that you can improve. And yes, they will require some degree of consistency and or effort on your part. But if something is worth having, it should be worth putting the effort into. If you are unwilling to do so, then you don't want it that bad and you have no room to complain. And yeah, some people will inherently require less effort in particular areas than others. I know dudes who practically stare at a squat rack and get big, or can eat a dozen donuts and remain lean. No one said life is fair, and as I said, equality doesn't exist. Spend less time whining and more time working. Playing the victim will not get you anywhere, and it will only prolong any misery that you feel. Take responsibility and action. Stop blaming and hating.
And you can find plenty of science-based videos on this channel with regards to making yourself more attractive and desirable.
There are also my science-based ebooks, which are linked below, that lay out nutrition and lifting protocols that you can follow along in order to naturally improve your body and performance as quickly as possible. Granted, there are things you cannot change.
And that, unfortunately, includes physical deformities such as these.
But extreme deformities like those are relatively uncommon or even rare. Nonetheless, you need to make the best of what you've got and be realistic wherever necessary. Even still, the harsh reality is that many folks will never partner up, despite all efforts and desires to do so. There isn't necessarily someone for everyone.
Even if the respective global gender population figures are close.
Hey, life isn't fair. In fact, it can be downright cruel. There are no guarantees for any of us, but that doesn't mean you should just resign. Resignation is for cowards, not fighters, and cowards never win because they've given up. And you don't know where you could be if you would just push yourself. Besides, ambition is considered an attractive trait for a man to possess, so just the act of pushing yourself might make you more appealing. Think of it that way.
Take this dude, for example. He's got no limbs, yet he has a decent-looking wife and a kid. Granted, he has notoriety and possibly money, as he's a Christian evangelist and motivational speaker, and those motherfuckers are usually loaded. And both status and money are attractive qualities to women.
This goes back to what I said about working on improving what you've got to make yourself more appealing. Even if you were dealt a shitty hand in a particular area of your life, like not having any arms or legs. Anyway, let me know what you all think in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and to share it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to keep on top of my regular updates. With that, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.